Our gospel for today comes from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. It's found on page 3 in your New Testament. Hear the good news for this day. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand. And it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, no, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Word of God, word of life. Thanks be to God. Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Amen. Grace and peace to you from God, our Creator, and our Savior and friend, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. There are moments in life that define us. People that are perfect for that instant when the world is watching. Historical moments that shape what it meant to be us. And those moments of our lives where if just one thing happened differently, we could quite simply not be here. But most days, we don't think about that. Most days, it's just another day. Just another chore. Just another list of items that need to be done. If salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? Most days, our lives have lost a lot of their saltiness. Because we know what salt does, at least to our food. Yes, we need to watch how much of it we eat. Does anybody know how much salt is in a ramen packet? I'm not going to tell you now if you don't know. But ever left the salt out of a recipe? You know it the moment you taste it. And then the moment you sprinkle it back on your ill-prepared meal, for that moment it's made right again and flavorful. That right salt at that right moment changes everything. And Jesus begins our gospel with that reminder, you are the salt of the earth. John F. Kennedy, his book, Profiles in Courage, which is back in the news again. But in that book, he talks about how great people with great minds and great pedigrees are a dime a dozen. What is really required for someone to do something of real greatness is, it's not just the person, the mind, or the pedigree, but the moment. That great moment that tests all of their skills to see if they can make something that has become truly bland, salty again. Sam Houston, that former governor of Texas, in Profiles of Courage, is not even described as really being all that great. Not in person, not in mind, not in pedigree. But in the time when Texas was going to break away from the Union, he stepped onto the scene and made the unpopular decision. A decision that left him getting removed from office. A thankless decision to seize that moment and tell the world what he knew to be right. We are better united than divided. It was not something about Sam Houston that made him great. It was making the most of that moment, the most of that time, the most of that flicker of an instant when the world needed not more division, but reconciliation. Into that blandness, he added the salt the world had lost. But we know nothing of that kind of division, right? Everything is honky-dory in this country, right? Thankfully, we all agree. We don't have any possible moments where we could step in like Sam Houston and be the salt and increasingly divided land world. Everybody okay? Oh, it's just a microphone. Okay, as long as that wasn't a limb. We know there is a need out there in the world, but most days we lose ourselves in the minutiae. For example, I need to buy more milk. I need to empty the dishwasher when I get home. Somehow it keeps filling up. I don't know how it happens, but then I have to empty it again and again. And right now it's full, and I need to empty it. And I need to take my dog for a walk, but it keeps raining, so I keep not walking him. And then he looks at me when I walk into the house, and he's guilting me for not walking him, but it keeps raining, and where am I going to take it? He doesn't want to walk in the rain, but that doesn't stop him from guilting me about not walking him. And that's what I'm thinking about right now, in front of you, in this moment, in this pulpit. Whereas Lutherans, we talk about the Spirit of God has descended into our midst and is working to shape my words toward their betterment. But my mind is on my dog that needs to go for a walk, and he's probably sitting in his crate right now whining because I didn't take him for a walk. Sorry, guys. But even though we get caught up in that day to day, we're always aware, I think, of the power of a moment. For we've seen those historical moments that have changed everything we knew about ourselves and the world. And it only takes a moment. For some, it was Pearl Harbor. For my generation, I think it was September 11th. That moment we were reminded that no matter how far away we are from the danger, no matter how warm and comfy we are in our beds, there's no such thing as complete safety. The boogeyman could always get us. That was just an instant, one brief moment of time. A few hours that changed everything, that changed our lives forever. We could try to go back now to how things once were, but we can't. That one moment has changed us. We're different now. Most days we don't think like that. We're not, I don't think. Although maybe now it's more with the continuous news cycle. But most days we're not always focused on that bigger picture of the continued escalations in Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The battles with China over tariffs and the global economy. We're not always focused even on the ways that we continue to grow further and further apart from our neighbors, further and further apart as a country. Our greatest trouble most days are those terrible drivers that cut us off. The cold rain and gray skies that make us wonder if our emotions are our own or if they are part of seasonal affective disorder. And this time of year, our minds are on all that paperwork we need to accumulate and organize before we do our taxes. Answering the question, what did we do today? Many times becomes a difficult question to answer. We get lost in the routine. We get lost in the next, and the next, and the next. We get lost in the, I'm just surviving. Moments robbed by the next moments. Moments lost by losing ourselves to the monotony. There's a power to a moment when one moves left instead of right, and that could have been it. When we could quite simply not be here because of one moment. We can't allow ourselves to lose that perspective of the importance of a moment. When my father was 5 years old, he was standing in the back seat of his mother's car while she was driving. You know that time before you needed seatbelts? Yeah. Who needs to be strapped into a speeding hunk of pure steel? That's hippie talk. But I think you see where this is going. My grandmother got in an accident. A car slammed into her front end, and my 5-year-old father went flying forward. He lodged his head in the steering wheel. The gear shift went in his neck. You can still see the scar now. Don't run up to him after the service. Let me see that. But eventually a firefighter got into the car and immediately saw the trouble and tried to free my father's head from the steering wheel. He couldn't. My father was stuck. This would-be rescuer leaned in and told my father he was going to try something. And this is the part that makes me believe every part of the story. Because sometimes you're like, maybe they, made up part of the story. But only my father, at 5 years old, would say what he said next to this firefighter. My 5-year-old father looked up at the man and said, "Just let me die." At 5 years old. The firefighter thankfully did not listen to my father, but instead seized that moment and managed to pull my father's head out of the steering wheel and out to the waiting ambulance. But how close in that moment my father came to not being here. How close I came to not being here. In the span of the briefest of moments, my grandmother's history, my mother's history, my wife's history, my children's history, this church's history would have been rewritten. That's some salt for you. In just a few moments, life can be changed. Life can be filled with flavor or left as bland can be. But most days we don't think like that. We're just trying to get by. We're just trying to survive. And what do we do in those moments? It gets to that next metaphor Jesus offers. We hide our salt. But here he calls it light. We hide it under a bushel basket. Because we think, well, what if it hurts if I let one moment pass me by? What will it matter if I just keep it to myself for a moment longer? I regularly think about what would have happened if that firefighter that came to my father's rescue had decided to hide his light away on that day. I get a lot of questions week to week about what the afterlife will be like. And usually I skirt around the issue because I firmly believe we simply don't have the words to describe what it'll be like. But if you want, today I'm willing to give you a full answer. But only if you want. You want to know what forever will be like?
Yeah.
Here it is. It's a lot like right now. I mean, not when I said that sentence, but now. Now. You see, they say the closest that you ever come to eternity, to our future life, is the present. At some point in history, everything will be done with the past, because we'll be living in forever. And at that moment, everything will have been written and all events will have occurred. And at some point, there'll be no more future because time will be removed, but there will always be this here, this now, this moment, this place where we always live but never spend our time. A moment that's regularly robbed of its salt by our mind being anywhere else. Like on that dog that's such a good boy but just wants to go on a walk but he can't because it's raining. Our mind is usually on the dishes in the dishwasher over there. The paperwork we are avoiding, that thing we did 3 weeks ago that we wish we'd done differently, the worries that are 3 days away that'll never show up. If salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? By starting to live in eternity today. By seizing the present now. There are always reasons to not do something. There are always reasons to put it off for later. But Jesus is clear. You are the light of the world, and a city built on a hill cannot be hid. It's not just the gifts that are held within us that make us great. It's not just what we could say or think or create. It's what we do with the moments that God gives us. The God-given moment we seize, claim, and live into because God is continually providing moments for each and every one of you to seize, to get salty. And when we don't, we've seen it. We've seen this world. We've seen what the world looks like when it's bland. And the world's just wrong. And I don't know about you. I'm getting sick of the bland. Every time I see it, it sickens me. Here goes a moment. And another. And another. How many more will we let pass us by? These are the days of First Lutheran Community Church. Not as it was in the 90s or 2000s, but as it's meant to be now. Churches always ask themselves, could they be doing more? Could they be bigger? Could there be more people filling the pews? But I'll tell you this. We have the right people in these pews right now. You have all been sent by God to this moment, to this time, to be this church and people together. Do any of you doubt that we have important work to do in this world that is too bland at times? Don't lose yourself on what's missing. Don't lose yourself on what's coming. Lose yourself in the here and now, because God is about to send you a moment that only you can fix. You are the light. You are the city. And you are salty. Let's go get that moment. Now. Amen.